Yeah, absolutely excited to have Jason from Coyote Theory on the podcast today, man. How have things been going for you?
First, great to be here. Thank you so much for having
Yeah,
me.
absolutely.
Things are going. I mean, we have a new album, so it's always nice when music is out there because it feels like you're chugging along. So all
Yeah,
good things.
is I guess the place I always love starting is, growing up, what music were your parents listening to? What music did you kind of start to gravitate towards once you found your own ear, so to speak?
Yeah, I think that's like a super interesting question, especially in context of once we get to us Coyotes. So I grew up on the Eagles, Zeppelin, real classic rock. Dad listened to a lot of Pink Floyd. It was mostly the Eagles and the Police, though. And that kind of permeated everything for me. Because if you know anything about the Eagles, or Eagles, sorry, they're not the Eagles. If you know anything about Eagles and the Police have a very opinionated drummer who makes sure you know he's playing leads on the drums in Stuart Copeland. And then in the Eagles, Don Henley is a storyteller, the drum service, the melody that he's trying to sing. And so when we got to Coyote Theory, I think two things became true as I started this band. One, I wanted to always make sure that I was orchestrating the songs while being behind drums, even if I don't sing. And then two, I was definitely willing to have enough, a say so behind the drums to make sure I got to have fun, weird things put into songs.
Yeah, I mean, is it as you kind of like moved on a little bit, were there any other drummers, in more, I don't want to call it modern bands, but like, as you kind of went down the road that really kind of inspired that as well?
Yeah, I got really into drummers, like pattern focused drummers. So Tony Thaxton, Motion City Soundtrack is a big one for me. Rudy from the band Gatsby's American Dream, which were a lesser known kind of band of that era.
Yeah.
Those drum parts still hold up. If you go listen to Theater, anything off Volcano, anything from Gatsby's, you're going to see that. Forgive Durden. I was really into that kind of fueled by ramen generation of artists. The Academy is The Butcher, a big influence for me. So if you listen
Yeah.
to Coyote songs early on, you'll pull a lot of his playing style out because between that and Tony Thaxton and stuff, I was really pulling from them.
Yeah. So I am curious too, like you guys, you had music out in, geez, the early part of the 2010s, and then you have
Yeah.
this, big hiatus, and then, kind of back with an album, what, geez, 14 years later ish, somewhere in there, I believe. What was that like? Like, was it something, were you guys making music in that time space, or, you kind of gone your separate ways and brought it back
Yeah.
together?
Yeah, we're going on the 15th anniversary of Color, which is the one that had This Side of Paradise, which was the song that kind of brought us back together. Hiatus is a very nice way to put we just kind of gave up.
Yeah.
Uh, we I started the band right at the end of high school as a way to kind of do this, and we really like ran at it full force. The four of us at the time, until we really burnt ourselves out. We always joke, but it's true. Is the VP of A&R at Atlantic Records at the time met like ran into us on the street corner in Orlando, which is where we were based. And he said, I swear to God, if I hear one more person pitch your band to me in an A&R session, I'm going to lose my mind. And we're like, that doesn't sound good. And we asked him, like, what do you mean? And he goes, he worked as a partnership with Full Sail. Full Sail's like a music college down here in Orlando. He said, I do a partnership with them where people get to pitch bands as a final project. And he says, without fail, every semester, somebody's in here pitching Coyote Theory to me. And I just got to tell them the same feedback. And so we had a lot of moments like that where people who would have the keys to the doors we'd want to walk through were telling us, you're not quite there. Things
Yeah.
are still around the corner. And it just, for us, it got to the point where we were in our fifth year of pursuing it, and it just didn't feel like it was enough. We kind of wandered off on our own. So yeah, it was a hiatus in a very, very real sense until This Side of Paradise had this like crazy viral moment all those years later, and we picked it back up.
Yeah, I guess, what is that like to having, a song that you put out 10 years, 8, 9 years prior, and then all of a sudden, you're scrolling, I think TikTok one day, and it's like, what, you see your song being used over and over and over again. It has to be quite the weird feeling, right?
Super. And it's definitely one of those things where people always say, like somebody called me and said it was happening. And that's how it was for us. It was very much this idea of we didn't know it was happening. now in my, early 30s, I wasn't on TikTok. I wasn't watching the videos where this song was showing up. So it was totally blindsiding to us, in the best way. First thing we wanted to do was like understand it. So like solve the mystery of why did this happen? Who caused it? All that. We
Yeah,
never did.
sure.
It was just the confluence, kind of a myriad of different um, events all happening together that conspired to put it there. Overwhelming though, because we definitely saw every side of the music industry all at once after not being involved in it for so many years. Um, and I can't say it was the most appealing situation, but at the same time, you're getting everything you wanted in music, right? So for us as like this DIY band, it's like, oh, we're seeing every side of this all at the same time on like a continuum folding. And we really got to pick and choose what we actually liked out of this whole experience a little bit.
Now, I guess, it's funny with the viral songs, like you're right. Like I feel like they just kind of it almost out of the ether. It's like very hard to find the pinpoint, the video or whatever that brings the trend. But in terms of the industry, was that I assume that was like the driving force to bring you guys back together and to pursue it all over again. And um, was it a lot of label attention? Was it a lot of just attention in general?
It's funny because that seems to be, the obvious answer, and it actually wasn't for us. So, about a year before this happened, the four original members uh, all got pulled back together by our guitar player, Grayson. He reached out to all of us separately and was like, hey, it's been so many years since we did this. Like, you guys just want to do it again just for fun, like as like an old man hobby in our late 20s. Um, and like me being there, the other guys and everything, we all kind of like slowly curmudgeonly came around to being like, yeah, okay, we can do music again. There's no expectation anymore. We're just totally doing it as like a hobby. And so that happened about 8 months after that. The song just went crazy, and so it almost acted differently than your question, which is to say that's what we were doing, was we were getting back kind of very organically, and this thing got thrust upon us and totally changed our expectations of the situation. So the label attention actually, if anything, made us hesitate, I think, a little bit there. And it took us a good year and a half, maybe a little over a year and a half, to get our debut album Still out, because we suddenly had pressure. We were like coming from nothing and expecting to have fun. And then all of a sudden there was this like label pressure. There was this outside pressure. There was these expectations put on us, or we put on ourselves, that almost deterred us a little bit, or slowed us down. I wouldn't say deterred, but definitely made roadblocks.
Yeah. Is it now, you talked about the new album or the album you guys put out, geez, I think it was a little over a year ago now.
Just over a year. Yep.
In terms of the songwriting from 2000, the early 2010s to the album you put out, was the songwriting or your approach to it different, or did you guys kind of still come away with this Coyote Theory sound that you were accustomed to?
I mean, we hope that it comes out a little bit to people listening as that sound that they're coming for sure.
Yeah.
But for us, it's totally different. So when we started this again, as you said, it's 14 years ago or something now. We were all in high school. We were all living at home. Some of us were in the same high school, so we could hang out, on a Friday, play all through the weekend. It's just not possible anymore. We've all moved on to different areas. Some people live in town. Some people live out of town. We have people in Nashville now, people in Montana. So we kind of had to change how we thought about writing music and make it more of a remote, distributed thing. Which in effect changes the process. So for us, the original process was very much get into kind of like the studio space, our band practice room, and just jam for the better part of 6 hours. And then eventually, a couple ideas would come, and then we'd start to, massage those. Now it's like, here's a fully fleshed idea, or here's like 30 seconds of an idea. See if you can stack the Lego bricks on top of it or redesign it.
When you guys are, doing this, kind of remote process, is everybody coming to the table with these fleshed out ideas, or is it more so one person kind of handling the the first base brick to speak, and then everybody's kind of adding on top?
No, for us, it's a little bit of all of it. It's kind of first come, first serve. We all want to be a part of it. We all want to make sure our voices are in there, because we're a trio. So I think at the end of the day, one of the things that, like, going back to when we talked about The Police, it's like something like The Police only works in the context that there's three different pieces of friction happening to this song. And if all three of these different poles of, pressure aren't pushing on that song, it's not a Police song. It's a Sting song. It's a Andy Summer song. It's a Stuart Copeland. God knows what he's making. Um, but that's kind of the same for us, where if it's, if Kyle's, our singer's bringing in a song, it's a song from Kyle. And without that extra external pressure, it doesn't become a Coyote song. Same with Grayson or myself. So we try to balance it. Obviously, sometimes somebody comes with a song that's, so good or so like close to what you can hear the vision that you don't want to touch it. And you want to be like, I want to preserve this. I want to respect it. I think we're all aligned that this is what this song is trying to say or sound. So you have those moments too. And I think it's about being flexible enough in these like distributed environments where you can say like, yeah, my ego or my, skill set, whatever it is, doesn't need to touch that. Like there's no reason to play that game. I like what you brought. I wouldn't add anything to it.
Yeah. And did you guys still have that, you mentioned kind of being fairly close, I guess, in high school and some of you guys going to the same school. Do you still have that, did you guys stay in touch in that hiatus? Were you guys still close enough to be able to have that confidence in one another to be able to critique a song or know when one is kind of done?
Yeah, I mean, two parts to that question. The first part is Grayson and I, who are kind of steering the band forward here, have stayed in touch since it stopped. I mean, I was best man at his wedding, like best of friends, lifelong. Even if this thing kind of grinds to a halt, I think that'll still continue. Which is a big selling feature for us in this, is that we can have that camaraderie. Second part of that question is kind of from the music side and being honest about that. It's totally a personality thing. I mean, we have definitely experienced in songwriting sessions and all this other stuff, or just knowing people who don't take feedback as well, or people who might be a little bit more sensitive to criticism or constructive feedback, which is totally valid. And I get it. It's just a personality. Maybe it's just who we are because we've known each other for so long. There is a level of like, be direct and honest with me. If I'm not serving what's needed, I'm not showing up properly, and it goes a long way, and vice versa. Like we have that like level of honesty that I guess you develop over decades.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I'll be told you have this, you have the song go viral, you all of a sudden have this, what you kind of described as external pressure. When the album is finally, it's all said and done and it's released and it's out there. What was release day like for you guys? And, how do you kind of feel about how it's been received?
I think people like it. I think the interesting thing about this, and I'm sure you hear this with other acts too, it's probably a heavy topic. Something like release day is such a marketing event, right? Like it is totally like this thing beyond music. And there is always this like artist business struggle, and we're even guilty of it, to where it's like release day is great, but it's not Aerosmith. Like it's not release day. There's a cake in a boardroom with the album cover on it, and we're all celebrating and stuff. It's like it goes out on Spotify. The countdown marquee goes to 0. We already know how many people pre-saved it, so they get to listen to day one. Like a lot of it's data points, and that's awesome. And it's so cool to know that people are doing this. But I think there's like a level of like rock and roll that's been removed because of the data streaming type of like very like A/B tested world in which music business has gone, that makes something like release day for the artist feel less impactful. Also, I'm not Sabrina Carpenter, so like Olivia Dean might have an incredible release day party and all this stuff, deservedly so. I think just as like a DIY artist, those things, you either have to create them yourself at this point, or you have to kind of see it where it is and know that it's just one marketing function to hopefully, a longevity in your career.
Yeah. I think that makes perfect sense because, you're right. Like these larger artists, the albums are talked about and hyped up, but then, geez, how many thousands of albums come out, every week, let alone
Right.
It must be still kind of odd. Now, how long, did you guys, was it like, I talked to artists a lot where they're like, oh yeah, we sat on the album for like, 4 or 5 months and then it was released. Was it like you guys were done and then it was out like a month later, or did you kind of have to sit on it as well?
No, we sat on this a little bit, but less. So like with Still, which was our debut album that came out, like you said, last March, we sat on some of those songs for 7 years or so, because they never saw the light of day, but we loved them. So we wanted them to be a part of the album. So when that got released, there was this level of catharsis where it was like, these songs are out there. People can know the references I'm making when I'm talking about this song I love. And that was nice. But then with something like Talking to Strangers, which had just released, just a few days ago, as at the time of recording this, we recorded it last May. We went to Los Angeles. We recorded it slowly, took our time to get it where we wanted, those 4 songs. And then just a matter of the marketing kind of cycle, single after single, it comes out, March of this year. So we would have been ready to rock and roll with it come, July or August, because we were so hyped up on it. We got it done. We had it mixed and mastered and, onto it. But it's a matter of making sure we're doing the most with the piece that we have.
Yeah, it's funny, in terms of these, data points and, the market for attention, it feels like artists are, I'm sure just labels and artists in general are leaning into this, single after single after single to try to, maintain the thought in the listener's head, right? That you exist out here in the ether. It's an interesting methodology to releasing music, but I think it's one that has proved to be successful for a lot of people, right? You kind of keep this attention, and by the time the EP's out, you have a whole baseline of singles that people are really into. And does this, for you guys, is this something leading into another album, or is it just kind of this EP gonna sit out there and you're gonna roll with it?
Yeah, I mean, I have a question back for you, but
Sure.
with this EP, we wanted it to act as like a tent pole of what would come next for us. So when we were thinking about this, moving away from these songs, like I said, was still that were, maybe some were 6 years old or so. We were like, what do we write now, and how does that relate to the sound of Coyote Theory? We put this out there. What did we miss? Sonic, brush strokes didn't we use? And so we wanted these 4 songs to kind of act as like pillars or guideposts to say like future music is going to run in this direction, one of these 4 directions.
Yeah.
So it definitely was a foreshadowing kind of EP of like, this is where we're running to. It's just a matter of running. But I wanted to ask you kind of back at this like single versus album
Yeah.
conversation. I was just having this conversation with Grayson not too long ago where we were talking about writing new music, and we were like, I think we want to write an album. Not because it's the popular thing to do, because you're right. If you do it right, you're releasing singles, you're building hype,
Yeah.
and there's something out there. But we're like, we just love the experience of an album. And the reason we say that, and my question to you is, when we release single after single, what's happening is, we have Talking to Strangers up since January or whatever as a marquee to pre-save. You're seeing every song in those lineups. You're seeing them slowly become available. So by the time the actual EP's out, maybe there's one song, maybe it's an album, maybe there's like 3 or 4 new songs you haven't heard. Does that, as a listener, like for you on the other side of this, does that change your experience of release day? Are you less hyped for a new album because you listened to half of it?
I think for me, it's interesting. So in terms of EPs, I would probably just listen to the song that I haven't listened to. But if it's a full album, I would probably try to go back through. And that's really specifically because this year, I've really tried to take the approach of going back to listening through full albums, right? Like everything has just become so single driven that it's very easy to just get lost in like picking songs here and there from artists. So I've really tried to be very cognizant of going back and trying to, understand the full picture that an artist is trying to do with an album. And I think that, not to say that it's lost by any means, but I think, yeah, just kind of in this single driven market, it's very easy to get lost in that just overwhelmed with the number of music, the amount of music that's out. So I try to go back. If it's a full album that they are releasing, I'll go back, listen to the full album, and try to really understand the picture they're trying to paint. EPs, not that there's not a story being told, but I'm just less inclined to do so just because of the amount of music I consume. I think it's probably the best way to put it. So
Yeah, no, totally makes sense.
yeah, I think that's probably really where I sit with it, and I feel like everybody's completely different. Like there's a lot of people that I know in this space that have gone back to like more album listening, just feels better kind of, and yeah, I just think it's for me, that's what feels better, and I've really leaned into it. And yeah, I think not that I think there's a right or wrong way, but that's just my personal, take on it, I suppose. Um, so when you guys, when you are writing, like an album, like Still, or even an EP, are you still trying to convey like an entire picture? Like you mentioned these being like four pillars of, music that you're trying to take Coyote Theory in, but is it encapsulated in like an overarching theme, or is it, just kind of these tent poles, so to speak?
No, it's a great question. It's funny because I think we want the temples, right? We want this like we want this main idea, this main theme to capture. I think what has happened for us since Color, which is the EP that we originally released, is we run up against the idea of creating and releasing versus sitting too long on finding the theme. And so what I think has historically happened for us, and it's worked, so I'm not complaining by any means, but I think what has historically happened for us is we end up backing into a theme. We almost act like a painter who put their pieces up in a gallery and then went to look at it and decide what it means, right?
Yeah.
Like we didn't put it up with a meaning, but kind of in hindsight, we're like, I see the picture clearly now. And so that's how Color was, because we got the chance to work with James Paul Wisner, which, if you're not familiar with James Wisner, he did the debut Paramore album, he did Under Oath, Gatsby's American Dreams early albums, The Academy. He is a storied hero of like that early kind of 2000s like pop punk, Fueled by Ramen punk. We found out he lived within 40 minutes or so of where we grew up. And so we were like, found his phone number, called him on a whim and left a message. He called back and he's like, sure, I'll come to your band practice. And like, for us, okay, we got to put 4 songs together really quick. James Wisner is going to show up to our practice, and we're, 16, 17 years old.
Yeah.
So then we backed into Color because we were trying to figure out the palette of colors we wanted to paint with, yada yada. Same with Still. We ended up with Still because we were talking to labels. Labels were surprised. I mean, one label literally called us, a major label, I won't name who, but a major label called us, got on Zoom, and they go, "Oh, I thought you were younger."
Nice.
And we were like, definitely not. They're like, "We just saw your videos," and we were like, "Yeah, we haven't been a band in 10 years." And so when we're having these conversations with labels, when This Side of Paradise first kind of went very viral, I found myself constantly talking to them about whether or not we could still do this.
Yeah.
And then I started using this refrain of like, I think we just need to, like when you're running still water out of a tap, sometimes after a while it's dirty, you have to let it run a little bit to clean out. I started using that a lot and explaining our writing process and figuring out where we were. And so we backed into the idea Still, because we're like, oh yeah, this is very much encapsulating. Can we still do this?
Yeah.
Talking to Strangers, the new EP that just came out, is the same deal. We very much were in this new era of Coyote Theory, and it felt like we were strangers to the idea of whatever we wanted to make next. And so we kept gravitating towards that because we couldn't think of a theme. And we were like, well, this really feels like a bunch of like brand new music that we're meeting for the first time. It feels like this era of us is completely strange because we didn't think we would get this far. So we kind of backed into that too. So we're very good at finding meaning in our meaningless.
Yeah, I think I don't think that's a wrong way to do it. Like that's sometimes I feel like you could get lost in really trying to like be the reverse way, right? Like trying to figure out what you're writing about first, and then all of a sudden it's you're up against it, trying to figure out what it is you're trying to actually say, as opposed to just saying it and then later on kind of hindsighting it and seeing what you were feeling in the moment. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So have you guys toured since the new album, and what was that like touring kind of, or I guess I should start with, have you toured since the new album?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what was that like I guess that, playing the music all over again, like were you playing like stuff from years ago, or was it just the new stuff?
Yeah, so we have played together. We have not played shows or
Okay.
gone on tour yet. And that really comes down to logistics. I mean, like I said, we are in 3 different states. We're 3-piece. At this point, we either need to, have our touring members, like live members, to fill in some parts so we're not so thin, or we need to backtrack, which is a whole nother experience in and of itself. And there's some like ego shedding of all of us, myself included, that has to come into playing to backtracks, because you have to kind of give yourself over to those backing tracks. So I don't know. For us, for playing live is something we love doing. I think writing music is the first love for sure. It's just so hard for kind of the DIY set of musicians right now to feasibly do it without coming back, with more expenses than even breaking even.
Yeah.
Um, but we've gotten together quite a few times to perform, to writing sessions where we'll perform the old songs together, to do practice rehearsals with session musicians and stuff, to prepare ourselves. And it is interesting and fun to do the old songs from so long ago because they're all in there. They're all muscle memory. Like, those are the easiest ones to play because when we used to tour back, 10 years ago, we only had like 6 songs. So we were doing a 20-minute set with like 8 minutes of talking to fill, 30 minutes.
Right.
So that muscle memory like sticks with you and it's just like glued.
Interesting. Yeah, that's yeah, the DIY in terms of artists is brutal in terms when it comes to like the numbers and really trying to figure out if you can make it work. So yeah, I get that piece completely. Um, I guess kind of leaning towards a few more like fun questions. This one always kind of trips people up. If you were say you were teaching a music class, in 4 or 5 required albums to listen to, kind of based on your music taste.
Yeah. Uh, I might do artist over albums because I think some of these get a little tricky.
Okay.
If I was teaching a like a drum clinic or something like that, I can only
Yeah.
stick to percussion,
Sure.
I think. I would make somebody go deep dive on some videos and discography of Max Roach. Max Roach, for anybody listening, is completely the reason why This Side of Paradise is the way it is. I was obsessed at that age. The first verse kind of part in This Side of Paradise is just me stealing a technique that Max Roach did on the hi-hat. And somehow they let me record it and nobody stopped me and it made it in there and wrote it. So like that's where I would start is like foundationally, like go watch somebody like Max Roach, doesn't matter the album, play, and you're going to be doing just fine. I would say moving forward from that, I'd go back to somebody like Tony Thaxton. Tony Thaxton from Motion City Soundtrack is, in my opinion, one of the best kind of like pattern drummers there is. And you can't listen to a Motion City Soundtrack song, Everything Is All Right, when you're around all these different ones without hearing this melodic, orchestrated percussion piece on a pop rock song.
Yeah.
Um, and it just adds something very unique and different that for me is great. Um, I would also say, I'd say probably Synchronicity, The Police, something like that. That's just the peak of what a band can do. Like a flash in the pan band like The Police that just did so much. Well, the Beatles too, and so much within a decade, and then have such a lasting impact. I would put that in there for sure as a drummer to listen to. That's 3. Got 2 more. I would say. This is a good question. I don't think about this enough. I would say, well, I'd have to give it to something like, um, honestly, like a Fall Out Boy. I mean, like Andy Hurley is a drummer of Fall Out Boy, just that band in general, just to be able to take every different piece of music in there and pull it out. It's a reminder to me as a drummer, as a songwriter, that you can do whatever you want as long as you like present the present with like a bow on top. They're playing metal riffs on guitar and singing, the things that Patrick Stump does. And it's a master class in like layering all these different genres
Yeah.
together. Um, and then I would say somebody more recent. There's like a very, recent trend, especially with drums of certain style, just like being as technical as possible, as many ghost notes as possible. And I think that's really cool, but I do love kind of the pocket playing that's happening a little bit too. So like I instantly think of like, um, I think of stuff like that As Tall as Lions, like Dan Nigro, who's doing, gosh, what's her name? Not Olivia. Yeah, Olivia Rodrigo. This is how bad I am with pop music. Olivia Rodrigo, I mean, he was in As Tall as Lions, was the main songwriter there. And to listen to major pop music like Olivia Rodrigo and see where these kind of like artists from back then are coming from and incorporating, I would go with something like that. So listening to anything by him in the modern kind of like production era.
Yeah. I love that. Even somebody who's not as well versed in percussion as you. That's I love it. It's perfect. So I also obviously I live my life in music curation, so I always love asking, a song or a project that you've really been into recently.
Yeah, Slim Dan, I have to say. There's a artist named Slim Dan. Have you heard of him?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, yeah. I love the like authenticity and like honesty about the songs. Just I mean, it's that one, I would say Hot Mulligan as well. Those are like two that I can't stop coming back to just because the lyrical content, the storytelling, the like authenticity is there, like
yeah.
full force.
Amazing. And then I guess, yeah, and kind of just wrapping up, like what can fans look forward to from Coyote Theory and what's coming up next for you guys?
Yeah, I like I said, we made this EP as kind of like a tent pole to like where we can run forward with. So new music is on our mind, like very much like trying to get another album out there, keep those things rolling. And then we'll figure out the other stuff in between. But I think music is where we really like our minds are really set on.
Yeah, amazing. Well, man, I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to talk to me, and yeah, I can't wait to hear what you guys have coming out next.
Thanks. I appreciate it, Matt.